right, I believe we are live and kicking. Had some struggles with screens there for a second. Restream decided to once again make some changes, and I'm slowly adjusting to them. But heck, we're here. It is Wednesday. It is 4:30, almost p.m. Central Time. Sun is shining. Life is good. So, what's up, Andrew?
Well, the sun is shining, but it's not a 108-degree heat index today, so I'm very thankful for that. Other than that, it's good. Things are good. Got a couple of things I'm ready to share today. I'm happy to be here with you this afternoon. It's been a long day, so I'm happy to do this.
Sounds good. Well, I have a mouse here, and I'm not afraid to use it, so I can enable your screen, and we should be good to go then, I think.
Look at that. There we go. All right. Thank you, sir. The first thing I came across here was over on LinkedIn, actually, a post from Anthony Porter with some updates to an Intune Remediations repository on GitHub. I had come across a couple of other Intune remediation repositories over the past year or so that I think we've shared at various times, but I had not come across Anthony's yet. So I find these, I love to share these when I find them because these are a great inspiration to the community. And there are a lot of things that you can implement with after significant testing, of course, but oftentimes you can implement some of these things in your own organization without too much effort, thanks to the effort of these community members. So in Anthony's repository here, he had a couple of different folders that have various remediations for things like BitLocker, Device Guard. The updates that I saw he had recently made to this repository were some Office templates, some custom toast notifications that might be something that you want to use in your organization. So thank you for sharing this with the community, Anthony. This is great stuff. I also came across what probably many of you in the Intune world saw this week. Service release 2408 came out. A couple of things that stuck out to me. As usual, there are a number of improvements that have come through in terms of managing Android, iOS, macOS, Windows, and some platform changes. But two things I noticed. The performance report for physical devices, Windows physical devices, if you have an advanced analytics license or an Intune suite license. These are things that look at CPU usage, RAM usage, things like that on endpoints. That might help you out. So that was one thing that I noticed. And, oh, I should mention this. You were talking about this just yesterday, Johan. How could I forget the improvements to the Intune management extension logs? Did you see this pop up on any of your endpoints yet that you noticed?
Not yet. I was actually checking one of them yesterday, and I saw it just got the IME agent updated on August 22nd. I was like, I wonder why. And I bet it's this one. But John did have oh, good Lord, what was his last name?
Towels, yep.
Do you happen to have that link?
I don't have it immediately handy, but I know where we can get it.
You know a guy?
I do. And I happen to know John's blog.
There you go.
Okay, I got it here. Great call. That was a good share for today.
Yeah,
this one right here.
Deep dive of it, and I really like the information that was shared. So good stuff.
Awesome. We'll make sure to get this up today. So, I mean, at a high level, basically for Win32 apps that you're deploying through Intune, those logs have now been split out into their own log, basically. fantastic stuff. Happy to see that improvement. And the last thing that I wanted to mention here, where'd it go? We now have a CPU architecture filter. Basically, so you can filter on x64, you can filter on ARM. So pretty cool stuff there. A welcome improvement for sure. And last but not least, Brian Dam wrote a wonderful article, I think, on the Patch Tuesday blog. The CrowdStrike debacle, a love letter to system administrators. I thought this was fantastic, very well written, talked about what happened, and started off with just a heartfelt thank you to all of the sysadmins that had to go through and deal with the CrowdStrike issue back in July. Recommend the read. It is not too long, but it has some very great information, lessons learned. What did Patch My PC learn? Which makes sense that he put it in here because this is on the Patch My PC blog. Really great stuff. I'd encourage you to go read it if you have a few moments. So that was what I had for today.
All right. I don't have too much other than I was working doing backup and restore of a bunch of virtual machines this weekend. Not entirely planned, put it that way, but over my entire career, I've been the biggest fan of Samsung hard drives, always being very reliable, even down to the consumer grade versions. They have been reliable. But now with these 4 terabyte NVMe Samsung disk, this is the third one that decides to go shaky on me. And the way it expresses itself, it's no fun at all. But once you start to put load on it, 20, 30 VMs running on the same disk, Windows forgets that it exists, forgets that it has a file system. So you get like an invalid MS-DOS function. Like, no, it's right here. It's very much valid. And the only workaround to get it back is to power off the device or workstation and bring it back up again. And then it will run for another few hours and then rinse, repeat in another few hours. So I bought 2 new ones. So I have some store for I can actually move them away to. So I've been spending my weekend and the few work days that we had so far of migrating content away from it. And that ended up being a video out of it, in fact. So if I share my screen here, up on our little YouTube channel, or one of them, I should say, because this is not the ViaMonstra one, but the Deployment Research one, my blog, or the one that is connected to the blog where me and Andrew and some others are posting our findings. If I sort on videos here, this one. The ZPAQ archiving utility. Not too many people have heard about it. I've been using it for almost 10 years by now. I stumbled across it, and I blame Kent Ogland for this, but we were supposed to do a training together. At that time, I lived in Sweden, and I was supposed to have copied all the training VMs with me to the US. I didn't. So now I needed to transfer almost 200 gig of VMs over from Sweden to over a hotel Wi-Fi, and that is really stretching it, to put it mildly. But this little utility runs on any Windows version. It runs on Linux and Mac as well. But it can archive tons of VMs to a fairly small footprint. So if you have 50 Windows 11 VMs that are like 40 gig each, the resulting file is going to be about 40 because it works on a block level. Same as the Windows deduplication does in server. Like when you have a volume like I have here with, tons of VMs, almost 2 terabyte, but this one is 700. Or this one here, this is the one I'm trying to rescue at the moment. It's about a 1.3 occupying 800, And probably this one here is one of the better ones. Yeah, 2.3 terabyte using 500. So
Wow.
yeah, long story short, I've been archiving VMs into this backup utility. It's just a command line utility, but it's fantastic. So when you have a backup of your VMs already, so these are all my server VMs and all my client VMs across. There's like 100 VMs in total. When you have an archive, you can just continue to add to it. And it runs super quick because it only copies the deltas into the archive. And when you restore it, you can say, all right, what version would you like to have from it? So this is like a poor man's versioning backup, but it's all self-contained in the single file. So this one has been my friend for the past few days here, and highly recommend looking into it if you need an archiving utility that is suitable for virtual machines. So that's what I've been doing.
Very cool stuff.
All right. Do we have any comment or questions?
We do. So we've got a question from Benny over on YouTube. Is there any way that Intune can do a compliance setting against the latest Patch Tuesday updates? I've seen third-party scripts, but can Intune do it natively, looking at block access, unless the machine is compliant with the latest Patch Tuesday updates? And he did have a follow-up comment here that he meant to say conditional access, but I think there's an answer in both in both systems. So Intune, actually, Johan, if you wouldn't mind sharing my screen, I can pull up the compliance policy that could be used.
Yes. It's funny because we had a quite similar question in our community also. We can come back to that one later, but
Sounds good. So for compliance, we can pretty easily create a policy here. We'll create a Windows 10 and later policy. And we'll call this Windows version compliance or Patch Tuesday compliance or whatever makes sense to you in your organization. And then from here, we can go to the next page is compliance settings, and we can select device properties. And here we can set a minimum OS version. So if we had, let's see here, if we go to, this is Windows 11. Here's what I want. If we go to the Windows 11 release information page, we can see that the latest version is 22.631.4112. So we can go in and put that full build version in there. And if a device doesn't meet that full build version, then it will be marked as not compliant. May want to set that, depending on the environment, may want to set that back a month or so to give some time after Patch Tuesday releases, or update your compliance policy after you would have expected your devices to be updated. So that's how we can set the compliance policy. We can also use that in conjunction with conditional access policies to say, if a device is not compliant, then we don't want them to access these resources. And that's how we can integrate the two things. Now, if we go over to our conditional access policies here and go to our policies, let's go to new policy, and we'll call this, we can call it Windows version compliance again. Here's where we set our conditions. And another way that we can do this with just conditional access is filter on device properties. So we can configure this, and we can say if operating system version doesn't equal the latest build number, then block the device from accessing whatever resources you're trying to block them from. Maybe that's all resources, maybe that's specific ones, you don't want to block them from email, or however you want to write the rules for your organization. Those are the two ways that I would approach this. Anything you'd like to add there, Johan?
Only the script that we got in our community question there. So if you're done, I can steal the screen.
Yes, of course.
All right. So what was a very similar question coming in? All right, I have a few services that I want to make sure are running on the system, and if they're not, I want to flag the machine as not compliant. So after a little bit of testing, it turned out it wasn't too hard to write the compliance script that did that. Basically, this little example here is just looking for two services that I happen to have running on my device, TeamViewer and Adobe Update Service. And I'm simply checking for them and spitting back a JSON file with that information. And then that JSON file or the result of that JSON file, that's how I build up my conditions in the script itself that I'm adding into to Intune. And Peter has a pretty good blog post on how to get this going. A slightly different example, he checks for a version of a BIOS, but it's the same concept. He has a PowerShell script that returns a JSON object, and then he creates the JSON for the setting. And in this case, he's looking for a string that has to match whatever BIOS version it was, in this case, a Hyper-V BIOS version. So it is not too complicated to set up. Those are over in it's a little bit upset because one of my DNS service is not running at the moment, so it's a bit of a name resolution things. But you can add your own scripts here to check for specific properties and services, and then you can create a policy to check against that result. So that there are plenty of options available to check compliance, and of course, I like that I added in the ability to have custom scripts.
Yeah, I mean, I love that script that you put together. I mean, it's very it's one of those good examples of you can do whatever you want in the script. You have those couple of things that you're checking for, but you can check for anything or a whole set of things. It's fantastic.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Bruce had a question about your Hyper-V backups that you were talking about. Does it work on VHDX files too?
It works. Absolutely. It works on any file. It's just a generic backup archiving utility. I believe I put the link to it under here. I'm not going to play this one, but I was looking for the links. Yeah, so this is the tool itself, and it's been around for a good while. The tool. So last update was like 2017 or something, but it still works beautiful, and it works for all type of content. Obviously, if you have a folder with your entire Blu-ray archive, yeah, you're not going to find much of data deduplication savings on that one. But if you have virtual hard drives and whatnot, you can absolutely do that. Prior to learning about this tool, I was actually using virtual hard drives as containers. So I would basically open up disk management. I would do it in PowerShell, but the same concept. And I would create a virtual hard drive, and I would enable data deduplication on that one. And I would pull all my content in that volume, and then I would run dedup against it. So I remember back in the days, I wrote a post about that. That was a while ago. See if I can snatch that from a different link. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one here. So how to store 283 gigs in 16 gig using PowerShell. So I used the PowerShell script to create the archives, create a virtual hard drive, and then I will enable data duplication on it, copy the stuff to it, run the dedupe job, and dismount it. And once I had that one, I would then run an archiving utility on top of that. But problem was it only worked on servers that had data duplication, and not everybody has that. The ZPAQ utility is just a single file, and it works on both clients and servers. There are no requirements. In fact, if you try to run it on a volume that has been deduped with server dedupe, that archive is not going to be happy one bit. So make sure when you put it, store it on a volume that is not deduped. So in my lab, I even named one of my volumes no dedupes. I would never make the mistake of putting the archive anywhere else. So yes, it works with virtual hardware.
Awesome. Great stuff. We've got a question from a user over on LinkedIn regarding Windows 11 feature updates via ConfigMgr. I'm repeatedly receiving the beloved error, delivery optimization, downloadable file saw no progress within the defined period. I've heard conflicting reports about Delta content needing to be enabled, and I understand delivery optimization also needs to be enabled, were the follow-up comments.
Yeah, so the UUP updates in ConfigMgr has been a bit of royal pain as of late. And these are the ones causing this problem. I haven't really found a great workaround when this kicks in, other than making sure that your DO settings are somewhat reasonable. And the Delta content being enabled or not enabled is depending on the ConfigMgr version you happen to be running on. And I also seen the ConfigMgr client gets confused and tries to force DO settings it's not supposed to set. The best workaround right now is not doing it that, and just use sequences for those upgrades. They do not have that problem. I have seen some, basically when playing around with, see if I can find this one here. Sometimes making sure you have decent DO settings, either configured through group policy or configured from Intune or configured from a script or an agent, whatever your preferred option there, can definitely help, because I have seen too heavily throttling causing these type of errors also when doing feature updates. It will work happily to download a Win32 app and happily download anything else, but these larger updates, because those files can be up to 10, 11 gigs in size, those UUP packages. But I would recommend, as no fun as it sounds, to do file a bug with Microsoft on it, so we get more eyes on this issue, because you're not the only one seeing this. If you need something that works right now, go ahead and create sequences and just deploy them. They will take care of the update just nicely for it or for you. Because the client is acting to some sort of a proxy to itself. That way it needs those extra ports, the 8005 port, etc. It's a very, very complicated setup they have done. And it's not the first time. It's very similar to when they tried to express installation files back in the days and realized that that was a bad idea. So yeah, time will tell. There's a new format coming out in 24H2 also, so fun stuff.
Hopefully.
We'll see.
Hopefully fun stuff.
Yeah.
So it's funny. The same the same user over on LinkedIn who, and I can't see their name here in the chat for some reason, but mentioned I tried to push for Intune but lost. And the reason that I mentioned that is we had another question come in from Clive over on Twitter. I'm sorry, X, formerly Twitter. My organization is looking to replace our WSUS server and move to the cloud. Would Windows Update for Business be a good solution, or auto patch? If you're moving to the cloud, I think that's a simple yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Johan and I, most of the folks that we're working with, if the organizations are looking at moving to Intune at all, Windows Updates is one of the very first things that moves. And for clients, we see that oftentimes increasing patch compliance becomes a little bit easier, more consistent across the organization, in my experience. So for me, that's a simple yes. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add there, Johan.
Nope.
All right. All right. So in a hybrid environment, does ConfigMgr Intune have the most reliable information? For instance, if I need to group my endpoint targets for a tactical deployment of an updated driver, I need to know which endpoints in my estate have the driver installed and require this updated driver. Would you trust one over the other or use both?
Well, from an inventory point of view, ConfigMgr will beat Intune any day of the week. So if you need to have targeting in Intune based on stuff like that, you typically have to extend that inventory using a remediation script that will upload that information to Log Analytics, and then you base your solutions based on that somehow. ConfigMgr in general is better on that part because the collections that you create has a direct relationship to the information you have gathered in hardware inventory. So you can very easily create queries that will automatically filter down devices to that collection. So I can very well create a collection for all devices that happen to have be of a certain hardware or have a specific software or a specific driver even. It all depends on what inventory I'm gathering. It's more tricky to do that in an Intune world. The exact same scenario on that level. Any thoughts on that, Andrew?
No, I'm right with you. All right. Have you heard of the issue with the Windows 11 OSD install software update step bombing a task sequence?
Oh, well, that one had a problem for the past 15 years since it was introduced back with ConfigMgr 2007, and it's been recommended not to use it since. It was even a time when Microsoft had a user voice for ConfigMgr before they decommissioned that, and the top that feature request was on the top 3. Make this step work. And the last status update I ever saw on user voice before they decommissioned it was planned, meaning they were working on it or planning on working on it. I recommend to update your media instead. I do not recommend to use that step in your sequences. If you absolutely cannot keep your media updated, you are likely to be better off running a PowerShell script or something to do updates during deployment. I just don't see the point of downloading an image with, the July update in it, just 10 minutes later to download the August update. I think it's wiser to just have the August media on the server and download that one only, instead of doing patching in like middle. because that can take 20 minutes, it can take an hour just to apply updates that you could have just included in the image. And today, with the release of images every single month from Microsoft, it's so easy to just snatch that media and add it in, or use solutions like OSD Builder to always generate the media that you have available for you, and use that one. And while you're at it, you can remove the indexes you don't want to have, or remove inbox applications that you don't want to have, etc. Because that will make the entire footprint smaller, less junk coming down after. So, a long rant, but I do not recommend using that step in your sequences.
Totally agree. Nothing to add. All right. Amir's got a question here around Winget. So when using Winget to download a Microsoft Store app for offline deployment, as you previously mentioned here and in the blog post you wrote, we have to download the associated license XML file. However, Intune's line of business app creation UI doesn't have a straightforward option to include this license file. It only allows for AppX bundle and its detected AppX dependencies. Is the license XML file actually necessary for offline deployment? And if it is, but can't be added through the UI, should we consider using a Win32 app PowerShell wrapper to package all AppX files along with the license XML file?
Well, if using Intune, that you already have the store apps as a native type. I'm not quite following why you would want an offline package when it's already available online.
Yeah, I know one that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was Company Portal, but even that, it seems like we've had some improvements potentially where even that you can deploy as online and assign a system and things like that. But Amir, if you've got some follow-ups here, maybe that will help us.
Because the most common reason to want to have offline packages is often that you want to implement that as part of your OS deployment process or something like that. So you want the sequence itself to install those. The most common example is like over the years there are several store apps that are required for certain hardware to function. It could be a SunMax driver or anything like that. And you want to dism them in or use dism or PowerShell during your deployment, and then you need to have that offline package. And it took the vendors the longest time to actually start to release those AppX bundles together with their drivers, but now they do, so they can be integrated. But for Intune, I don't really see the need to download and upload an offline bundle. Unless I'm missing something.
All right. So we'll move on to a couple of more questions here. While Amir, again, if you have some more that you'd like to add, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll address it. Couple of comments and questions here that have come in, though. Bruce, good comment on AutoPatch. The dynamic group ring based on percentage number of devices is a killer feature in AutoPatch. Very cool. I know a lot of people like that one. We have a question over on Twitter as well. I don't think that's a habit I'll ever break, Johan. Last Patch Tuesday, we were trying the expedited updates through Intune. So they are in a co-managed setup with the Windows Update workload moved over to Intune. And the devices took forever to get the updates, even for those that received the expedited update, it wasn't forcing the restart. Have we seen this? I have personally not. I haven't had much of a need, knock on wood, to go through with the expedited updates at this point. But something I'll try to keep an eye out for. How about you, Johan?
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I see a comment here from our friend Dan, another higher ed, one of the higher ed folks in the community. We're in EDU, so still no auto patch. Yep. It's being kept away. That's the trade-off for getting free remote help in Intune, I guess. Auto patch is off the table.
One day, maybe. One day.
One day. Well, you beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So we've got another question here on LinkedIn. No worries, just to be clear, they said last question and then I'll kick rocks. No need to kick rocks. You come in and ask as many questions as you want. We love them. In our opinions, what is the best option for patching servers? You want to take this one first, or you want me to start?
No, I can answer to it. I mean, I've been using ConfigMgr all my life, so obviously I'm biased towards using ConfigMgr.
Yep.
But I have heard really good words about Azure Arc lately. I just haven't had a chance to play around it much myself.
Yep, I agree totally. I've seen folks develop custom solutions as well, just using Azure Automation, which Azure Arc actually uses in the background for updating. But if you've got ConfigMgr in your environment, I'm more of the opinion why go away from it for updating servers at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, ConfigMgr has been around for such a long time, and there is good information out there. It's a very reliable platform for doing upgrades. It's also a very complicated platform, but that's another story. But
Yeah.
It works.
Indeed. All right. Question over here on YouTube around DO. With the delivery optimization config profile set deployed to 2 devices on a personal lab, is there a good resource you recommend or details on how to successfully test if it is working? Well,
yeah, well, I can explain a little bit about the problem just because it's fun.
I was going to say a question like this, I get to just sit back and listen.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a distributed environment, so in this case, it was a lab environment where there were 2 machines on a network. In the traditional default DO, as it was for Windows 10, DO is never going to offer more than 4 files at a time to someone else. So if you have one client that downloads, say, 7 files, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's only going to share 4 of them to others. So if you have hundreds of files, you often need 5, 10 devices on the same subnet to be able to get any sort of good peering results from them. That changed with Windows 11 when Microsoft announced the NSSD, because that removes that 4-file limit, but it also intended for smaller files. So usually we see better approach when enable DNSD for Windows 11. It's just a policy. The fun part is it works also for Windows 10, but you can't set it as a policy. You can set the same registry key, and then Windows 10 will also have that support to newer versions of Windows 10. So usually you need a few devices to see this, but basically if you open up the event log, just the regular, there's a PowerShell to read the DO log file. So it's not in the event log, but it's event tracing log file there. Every time you see an entry that says caching, that file is available to others, so you can see that. But you can also ask it for statistics. There are commandlets for DO to ask for statistics, and they will tell you whether you are successful in peering or what not. You can even just open up the activity monitoring settings, and it will happily show you how you're doing on peering. So it's quite easy on just 2 devices to see that data on your peering, but it's really hard to test it with only 2 clients, because you're going to have to do quite a few downloads to be able to find one that decided to actually peer the files that you were needed on the second device. As always, if you want to learn more about the inner behaviors there, we have shared this post many times, but our friends over at MS Endpoint Manager, Morris Daly with others, they did a really nice write-up just recently here on what's going on behind the scenes for DO. And we also have our own Phil over at 2Pint has been writing some blog posts lately that explains the behavior on content that is either peering or not peering at all. So it's a tad complicated, to say the least, but the information is there if you know where to look for it.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Bruce had a follow-up comment here for servers, Azure patch, or did they change the name? If that's a reference to Azure Update Manager. So Azure Update Manager, as I understand it, free for Azure VMs, but if it's going to be for on-prem VMs, that's where Azure Arc is going to come in. And then there are, it's a $5 a month per server bill for patching your servers that way. So there's that. Assuming that that is the Azure Update Manager solution, which they made a few changes to that and the pricing and everything sometime last year, I want to say. All right. So we do have some follow-up from Amir here. So going back to last week, he had his ESP not picking up all assigned apps. Reduced the number down to 6, but some machines still constantly got only 5 of them assigned during ESP. The missing app is Company Portal's online MS Store app. After doing many tests, figured if the device had been wiped or reverted locally without running any cleanups in Intune, ESP gets it. But if we initiate the wipe from Intune, ESP won't pick Company Portal. Another blog, Call for Cloud, Rudy Ohm's blog, mentions the device compliance must be at play here, so devices reverting locally retain their previous Intune compliance during the subsequent autopilot process. And the Microsoft Store is happy to offer the app. That's why I decided to try the offline package, so it won't rely on the MS Store compliance requirement. I appreciate the context. So still working through that issue from last week, basically.
I was just trying to look up that post on Rudy's blog, but it appears that blogs is down, at least for me.
Oh, yeah, I'm seeing that too.
Well, I know he was working on migrating in all of Jason Sandy's blog posts to his blog, because Jason has not been able to blog much lately, and I guess he figured out it was better to have it somewhere that things gets updated than have it long and forgotten.
Yeah.
I think I need to ping Rudy about the blog.
Good idea. Yeah, he's got a whole write-up around Company Portal.
Messages, Rudy. No, that did not work either. I'm not sure what's up. All right. Anything else?
We do have another question here on YouTube. I have a Windows 11 device with Home Edition enrolled into Intune and have the company portal. After signing in with my credentials, it's added to Intune, but I do not see the other user option to sign in with. Any ideas? There was just a follow-up comment that just came in. The device is a corporate device and set it so in the Intune portal.
Nothing.
No, most of the things that I'm coming across are things that I believe are there by default because I'm not typically running into this issue. Fast user switching, a group policy that will enable this, that sort of thing. I don't know. I was going to say something about it being home edition. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but there were some follow-up comments here. Presume the E3 license the user has will switch the OS edition to enterprise, but Dan followed up here. Home will not upgrade to enterprise regardless of E3. It does require Pro in order to do that edition upgrade to enterprise. Great point, Dan.
Yeah, that I have seen.
Yep.
I got a Surface device that came with Windows 11 Home, and in order to get it up to Enterprise, I had to go through Pro and then Enterprise.
Yep. Yeah, and Dan's follow-up comment here, absolutely correct. I not typically working with Home, so I wasn't sure here, but Dan said that it would be an Entra registered device, not Entra joined, because Home cannot be Entra joined. So very good. Thank you for that comment there, Dan. All right. Well, looks like they're going to try getting the Pro Edition on there and then try from there.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Great teamwork. Oh, look who snuck in here.
Yeah, Mike Terrell commented on Surface. Yeah. He got one too. So he got one of the shinier ones recently. The one that was just released earlier this year. 64 gig of memory and all the good stuff.
Very nice.
Yeah. Not jealous at all.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Awesome. Geez, I can't believe it's already 5:21.
We just started. It's just
Feels like it.
yeah. But that means we still have 9 minutes to go. Any questions out there?
That
Comments for that matter. Bruce is asking if Mike loves surfaces now. Mr. Mike Terrell, that is joining us here, he has been working with surfaces for quite some time. And from what I've understood, he's grown quite fond of them.
All right. Amir is just asking a follow-up here. If compliance is not an issue, excuse me, can you think of anything else which could have stopped the ESP from getting company portal only on brand new or Intune wiped devices?
I think that stands out.
Amir, can you remind me, is it not even being offered at all, or is it not installing? So not being offered versus being offered and failing installation, I guess. I just found a post that I've heard you talk about this so many times, Johan. Somebody, no reason to, I don't think. Just somebody talking about their issue was Zscaler was blocking it. And I know that you've run into Zscaler issues once or twice in your time.
Yeah, every week.
All right, so Amir said not offered. I mean, the inconsistency, I think without seeing it, it's I can't put my finger on the inconsistent experience.
Now that will basically dab through log files, right through event logs,
Yeah.
diagnostic scripts, trying to figure out what's going on. Like I mentioned earlier, I would definitely have someone, even though it might not help you immediately, create a support case of it, and at least get some more eyes on it. See what's going on. Otherwise, it'll be a debugging session.
Yeah. Bruce just had a follow-up question here on Amir's question. Is that recent? I recently had a new tenant to deploy, and because of policy conflicts, it was killing ESP app and policy assignments. Fixing the conflicts resolved the ESP issue.
That's the first for me, but all right, that was a good find.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in general, Intune is not very forgiving for conflict in settings, so you can definitely see that happening.
Another question here. Has anyone ran into an issue where a Windows Intune device has the Windows Update pause permanently enabled and found a solution? I have not come across a pause being permanently enabled.
No, I didn't even think that was possible.
Mm-mm.
It's supposed to only last for 35 days or 30 days, one of the two.
Yeah, and then actually force the device to check in after that.
Yeah. Is it 30 or 35, Andrew?
Of course you would. I can tell you. I can get that answer, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Off the top of my head, not so much.
35 days. All right.
Oh, you beat me to it.
That was not too hard to search for. All right, still 3 more minutes. Can squeeze at least one more question in.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have a shameless plug, if nothing else. We were joined by 2 Point Software and Mike Niehaus this morning for an advanced autopilot session. Our tireless editor, Lindsay, is working on that video right now, and it will be uploaded first thing tomorrow morning. So for those of you that missed the live event today, you'll be able to snatch that in the morning. I can probably even find that link.
Fantastic presentation, by the way, as always, when Mr. Niehaus is talking about autopilot.
He knows it quite well.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Helps when you're part of the development team for like 6 years, or how long it was, 5 maybe. But this one here, that one will be, it's already up. I didn't notice. Guess it was ready this afternoon then.
Awesome.
So yeah, if you haven't had a chance to catch it, it's an hour and a half. Advanced autopilot.
Very cool.
And the price is just right.
I'd call that right.
Yeah.
All right, and then I think we've got probably our final question here. Not sure if you have any recommendations here, Johan. Can you refer me to a current guide on how to properly set up SCEP or NDES?
Absolutely not, but I know one who can. Mr. Richard Hicks.
Indeed.
So I would recommend checking his resources out. So this gentleman here, this is just one of his tweets. It's nothing to do with this one, but come on, X. Richard Hicks is an authority on everything certificates, so recommend reaching out to him.
That man knows his certificates.
Yeah. That is true.
All right.
But that takes us, I believe, to the grand final. All right.
That was a fast hour.
Yeah. Andrew, as always, thank you, everybody out there. Thank you so much for joining, for the great comment, great interactions, great questions. We certainly hope to see you again next week. Have a good one.
Yep. Thank you, Johan. Thank you, everybody else. Have a great rest of your week.